Is red-haired Shanks the final villain of One Piece? Today, that is precisely what we're going to be talking about. Shanks is a really unique character because despite him being in the series since chapter 1, since the very beginning, we still know next to nothing about the guy. 25 whole years later, and red-haired Shanks remains one of the most mysterious entities in all of One Piece, and that fact alone is pretty surreal to hear out loud. And it is because of the lack of Shanks that we've gotten throughout all of these chapters, throughout these 1,000 plus chapters of One Piece, why his intentions are constantly questioned whenever Shanks decides to make a guest appearance on screen. It's really strange and in many ways unprecedented for a character who influenced our main protagonist, who indirectly set our main protagonist on the path he is now, to have such little presence in the actual story, but that is most definitely by design. There is a reason why Oda has been hiding Shanks from us for all these years, and very soon we're gonna find out why. But until Oda decides to have Shanks do, well, anything within the actual story of One Piece, for the time being, all we have are theories and speculation, which brings me back to today's video topic at hand. Is Shanks the final villain of One Piece? No, Shanks is not the final villain of One Piece, not by any means. But I do think there are some dark truths about Shanks that we are not yet aware of, but he is not by any stretch of the imagination the final villain of the story, and here's why. Starting with what I feel is the most valid argument against Shanks being the final antagonist, it's the fact that that idea is kind of lame. And this isn't necessarily to knock anybody who is 100% behind the notion, the idea that Shanks is in fact the final villain of One Piece. To each their own, and it's not a bad concept on paper, but how many times in media have we seen this trope? This trope of the person who the main character looked up to being an actual bastard in the story. It's a bit redundant, and I think Oda can do much better than that for a character who's been literally hyped up since the beginning of the story. And this isn't to say that that trope is inherently bad either. I personally have seen it executed brilliantly many times over in the 24 years I've been on this planet, but I am not one bit interested in seeing that from Shanks. With a character of this magnitude, of this caliber, with this much hype, there are so many different ways, so many different directions in which Oda can go to make Shanks one of the most compelling and captivating characters in the entire series, that I feel that making him a bad guy at the very end, it's lame. It's very lame, like I said earlier. But if there's anybody, if there's any author out there in the world who I trust to make that work, it's definitely Oda. I just think that Shanks being that cool, laid back, easygoing uncle who drinks way too much from time to time, and who may or may not have a couple dozen skeletons in his closet, to be a more interesting concept, as opposed to Shanks being a sort of Eisen-like figure. Somebody who bides his time, who waits his time, who waits in position like a viper for the perfect opportunity to strike. We have come across so many evil, terrible, nefarious characters on our path to the One Piece. I mean, just one arc ago, we were dealing with Kaido and Big Mom, both of whom are some of the most evil characters in the entire One Piece verse. So I would love if Shanks is just cool, a laid back guy, not perfect, he's clean, not squeaky clean, but he's an overall decent human being, and that kind of aligns with everything we've gotten from Shanks up until this point of time. So all of this possible talk of Shanks stabbing Luffy in the back at Laugh Tale in order to claim the One Piece for himself, it ain't happening. That's not happening. There's no chance in hell that happens. But above all else, the biggest reason I say Shanks cannot be the final villain of One Piece and should not be the final villain of One Piece is because there's already a number of characters ahead of him on that totem pole, and here's what I mean by that. There has been obvious setup, clear-cut plans in place for Luffy to have a couple of other potential in-game opponents, and Shanks is simply not one of them. There is Blackbeard, for example, somebody who has been portrayed as a foil to Luffy going all the way back to Jaya. It's been speculated for years now that Teach may be the man who ultimately takes the life of red-haired Shanks, and this will only add a gallon of gasoline to the already burning rivalry between Luffy and Teach. And to further drive this point home, Shanks has very openly expressed resentment for Teach and his actions. Blackbeard is cunning, conniving, evil, we know the guy. It would make zero sense for Shanks to bash someone for sharing his viewpoint if he were to be this hypothetical final antagonist of One Piece. And we can't forget the man responsible for killing Luffy's brother Ace and the current fleet admiral of the Marines, Sakazuki. Sakazuki played such a psychological role in Luffy's development going into the time skip. I feel that it's very appropriate for them to have a duel, a enormous duel, which is probably going to happen in the final war, which is going to be against the world government, right? That has to happen. That's going to happen. There's too much setup in place there, in my opinion, for Luffy and Sakazuki not to have that battle that we all deserve to see, you know? I know there's this idea that Sabo could fight Aka Inu, and I'm personally not against that. I'm for that too. But it's more narratively satisfying if Luffy is the one who puts down the person who murdered his brother. Even though Luffy really isn't the vengeful type or the type of person that kills someone intentionally, I think dealing with a man who killed your literal brother in front of you is an exception to the rule here. Then there's Emu. Emu is somebody who wasn't even a thought in people's minds until the reverie. So due to the sudden introduction of Emu, we've had to kind of rethink, okay, who is Luffy gonna fight or at least have to deal with come the end game stretch of One Piece. And even though we've seen so little of Emu, the few handful of appearances that we have gotten from them has definitely contributed to everybody really thinking that, okay, this guy is going to be a threat come the end game. He is the threat going into the home run stretch of the series. Red-haired Shanks does not fit into any of that. I think Shanks' role in the story is this. Shanks is essentially to Luffy what Kite is to Gon from Hunter x Hunter. They are mentor-like figures who gave the main protagonist their way of thinking, their way of approaching their world, the way of life that they choose to go down. Luffy is on the path to becoming king of the pirates, and this is not something Luffy would be doing if he had never met red-haired Shanks. Similar to Gon, who would never have decided to become a hunter and find his dad if not for Kite. There's no ulterior motives, there's no underlying scheme to backstab Luffy at the best possible opportunity, no. Shanks' role was to sort of guide Luffy to the throne of Pirate King, to fulfill the same dream as his captain Goldie Roger. It's been apparent throughout the story that Shanks also, just like Rayleigh, just like Crocus, he was waiting for somebody like Luffy. If you remember, Shanks told Rayleigh directly that Luffy had said the similar words that his captain Roger did. That's really all you need to know in regards to how Shanks views Luffy. But just because Shanks won't be the final antagonist does not mean that Shanks and Luffy will not fight. I think they're gonna fight. What kind of fight that's gonna be, it won't be a serious death match where they're both trying to kill each other, but it's gonna be a fight, a friendly fight, a fight that shows you just how strong Shanks is and just how far Luffy has come. I am under the impression that Shanks has been guarding the final royal poneglyph needed to find the One Piece. So if my theory does hold correct, I think that Luffy versus Shanks would be a sort of a test trial, a test for Shanks and a test for Luffy to see, is Luffy ready to be the Pirate King, to be on top of the world. So yes, Shanks and Luffy are in fact going to have a duel, maybe even a Davy back fight. And once the dust settles, Shanks is effectively going to hand Luffy the fourth world poneglyph on a silver platter. And you know what? That would be incredibly satisfying, seeing the hell that Luffy and his friends had to go through just to get two of the royal poneglyphs, the one from Kaido and the one from Big Mom. So to have the final missing piece given to him, he's earned it. He's damn well earned it, but him being gifted it from Shanks, I would love that. That would be great to see. So to bring it all back home, to wrap this shindig up, Shanks is not the final villain of One Piece. Shanks is the inspiration and the last stepping stone for Luffy to fulfill his destiny as king of the pirates. Now there is undoubtedly more than Shanks that we don't know about, some real dark stuff. The man ain't called Big Boss for no reason, and you don't exactly become an emperor of the sea by playing entirely nice either. We are gonna dive into all of the mysteries of Red Hair Shanks another day, but for today's video, this is it, and if you enjoyed the video, be sure to smash that like button. If you are by some chance new to the channel, make sure you subscribe. Help me help you. When you subscribe, you are guaranteed some of the best content on the market, and believe me when I say you are not gonna want to miss the content I have planned. Trust me on that. But all of that aside, you guys be easy, enjoy the rest of your day, and I will catch you guys later.